Yeah, welcome to Defan 90.
Wow,
Yeah,
big
Wow.
90.
Oh, nice.
yeah. Welcome to
Happy to be
Defan
here.
90. Hello.
Each episode keeps pace with my age these days. We're pretty slow at
So
putting
we're-
them out, so it's kind of like
We're finally catching up to Ray's age. I mean, we're not there yet, but we will eventually.
2 or 3 years.
Anyway, let's hear from our guest. Hey, Jacob, welcome to Defan.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, happy to be here.
Good. So I think we've been talking about gardening and games and shit and all that interesting stuff. Now we can get into boring things. For people who wants to be bored while doing gardening or gaming. That's some
Yep.
useless crap into their ears. So
Yeah.
anyway, and that's most of the stuff that Ray and I do, but not from the guests anyway. So
One of the
maybe
things I was going to
quick.
say was I already kind of biffed it once in the show, so kind of like leading into the
Yes.
into the subject here.
Yes, that's been a great sort of backronym for Biff.
Yeah.
I was thinking if I ever write a book, I could call it Biff Your Next Web App.
Yes.
I think it can be the official book of Biff, right? That-
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. There's
Yeah.
not an official book yet, so
exactly.
Spots open.
Yeah.
Spots open.
Maybe
Yeah.
we should tell people what Biff is. I'm pretty sure everybody in the Clojure community heard about it, but it's a good idea to give a bit of an introduction.
The FBI
Yeah.
who listen to this, they need to know the context.
Yeah.
The Illuminati.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, yeah, sure. Let me give the 30 or maybe 48-second introduction. So Biff is a Clojure web framework, and it's fairly lightweight. It's like, last time I checked, it was around like 2,000 lines of code, maybe. It's not like a huge hulking thing. But it grew out of my own projects. So for the past 4.5 years, I've been a solo bootstrapped founder, or at least solo for most of that time. Anyway, and so I've been working on all this random stuff. And especially at the start of that, I sort of bounced around between a lot of different like deployment things and basically was trying to figure out, how do I want to make my own Clojure web apps, and just trying to learn how to do that. And so eventually, after like a year and a half, I kind of settled on figured out a stack that I really liked. And so that turned into Biff. So I basically just packaged it up and wrote some docs in case anyone else wanted to use it. Took about so I released it. It wasn't like I'd do like a release every 6 months or something and be like, hey, there's a new Biff version, but I don't think anyone other than me was really using it much. Until after another year or a year and a half of myself dog fooding it and experimenting with different things, it got to a much more sort of stable, mature phase. And so that was about let's see, a little over a year ago is when I did another big release. It's kind of a rewrite. And so ever since then, Biff has been in a much better state and actually good state for people other than me to use, and people have been using it, and it's been slowly getting more adoption, which is exciting.
So what was the problem when you came to Clojure and you're looking for web, doing your own thing? What was the problem with what existed?
I don't know if I'd
It was
say-
wrong. It was just terrible.
I wouldn't necessarily say there wasn't a big problem per se. It just kind of, it just takes a while to kind of get familiar with the ecosystem, right? And so I was trying out all these different things, and also I'm like lots of hackers, I just like to try out random stuff. And so I was doing I was doing Datomic, and I had this app on Datomic, Cloud Ions, which was cool. Absolutely overkill for what I was doing. But so that's cool. And I got into at one point I had a co-founder, and he introduced me to the essay from Tonsky, which is the web after tomorrow. If you're familiar with that one. So that was very interesting, and we were interested in that whole idea of how can you make this cool web stack where it's like it doesn't feel like you have two separate places, right? Like the back end and the front end is just like one place, right? So I was very interested in that.
It's interesting that it's tomorrow because that's where we started. We're circling back to tomorrow being yesterday.
The web before yesterday.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
The web after yesterday.
Web after yesterday. Yeah.
The web before the day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just kind of had this tendency of like, one, I'm trying to build apps, but two, I'm also just trying to like experiment with cool ways of building apps. Right, and so kind of two counterproductive forces there, perhaps. So I was doing like stuff on Datomic Cloud Ions for a while, and it was just sort of overkill for what I needed, and especially with there's like a lot of AWS complexity, and the benefits, like there are benefits to that, but not for me as a solo person, just doing little side projects. So I ended up doing Firebase actually for a few months with ClojureScript, and actually really liked that. Firebase is very interesting. And they have like their database. They have like the real-time subscription stuff, around the front end. You can say, I want this and get it, and that's kind of related to the whole web after tomorrow thing, where the sort of the data syncing part is just sort of taken care of, and the backend is just sort of this appliance that you don't necessarily have to do a whole lot with. So I was like messing around with that, and I wrote a bunch of like additional cool Clojure stuff on top of the Firebase database. And so that was fun, but even that, after a few months, I decided, it would be kind of nice to just have like a normal JVM backend on like a persistent process instead of like putting everything into these like serverless ClojureScript functions on Firebase.
I think I recently saw some, I think, meme or a joke like, hey, there is a graph like number of clients, which is basically 0. And it says our serverless app is now clientless. Well, it's serverless, but it's also clientless. So I don't know. It's pay as you go, so there is no expense.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing ever happens. It's the ultimate in cost efficiency.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So,
but this Firebase thing, this was after Google bought it, I guess. So it's the Google version.
Yeah. So it's been Google for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. It's been a while. Yeah. But I think Firebase, wasn't the idea was that, if I'm not wrong with Firebase, it was kind of like this whole like system in a box thing, so you could just like save your data and then it would get it back. It would all just be like, it was very ergonomic, So,
Oh yeah, and it's very and that's a large part of what appealed to me. Like it's like it's got all this stuff, so like it's got the database, but it's also got hosting for your static front end, and it's got like authentication. That was huge. And that's actually, if I remember correctly, I think that's how I started using Firebase. Started like just using the authentication with my Datomic Cloud Ions on, and then decided,
this is. I'm not sure if you are old enough to remember this shit, but this seems like enterprise FizzBuzz, like just make it as complicated as possible to do like tiny thing.
Yeah, he's hooking up his IBM mainframe to his ARMDAL mainframe because there's one assembly instruction in the ARMDAL that he really needs.
And then it is multi-cloud, multi-region, or whatever the crap that is.
And clientless.
Yeah, exactly.
We have more regions than clients.
Just in case our one client moves from one region to the other region.
Meanwhile,
for whatever the reason.
Meanwhile, we're using it to fill in our weekly timesheet.
Sorry, I mean, I don't want to, say you made a wrong architectural choices, but it's
fun.
I'm sure it was fun.
No, I'm sure it was fun. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, and honestly, that's kind of been the progression over the past like 4 years that I've been doing stuff. Is started out with like doing all this like cool, interesting architectural stuff, and then gradually realized, oh, I don't really need this. I also don't really need this. I also don't really need this. And so now, like cutting to the end of the story, Biff started kind of like halfway through that. And so like Biff had all this like interesting stuff going on.
Jacob, we're not in a big hurry, It's like
yeah, exactly. We want to know.
We'll get to this like one function ring handler a bit later. So break it down.
In fact, last week I just deleted all the Biff code, and it's just a single page. It says start with the close CLI tool, and here's how you write a hello world function.
So it was beefy, and then now it is Biff. So slowly it was way more heavier enterprise framework
now.
Okay, nice.
All right, sorry.
But how did you get to there? By the way, how did you come to Clojure? Because building all the stuff, this Datomic, and with so.
Oh yeah.
Was there period before Clojure that you were in darkness, and then how was it? And
yeah,
how did you see the light?
Yeah, so I've basically Paul Graham. I read a lot of Paul Graham essays, which now that was on the survey. So apparently, like 16% of people who filled out the survey I got into Clojure thanks to Paul Graham. So I'm part of that demographic. So yeah, like read way too many Paul Graham essays in high school, which also is why I got into startups, which is a little bit of a mixed bag. Clojure has been a much better investment, I think. But anyway, so I've been interested in Lisp for a while, and I wrote like 30 lines maybe of Common Lisp in high school, just like playing around. But like mostly I was doing Python and honestly a lot of Bash. I wrote a lot of stuff in Bash that should have been written in Python, probably just like when I was messing around with Linux in high school and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. But anyway, so like fast forward, so I got into college. Still doing like Python for side projects and of course like some Java and in high school I had done a bit of Java learning like Android apps and stuff, which I've since sworn off. So in college then I started getting into some undergrad research projects. So I finally had an opportunity to start like spending more time on my own projects again instead of just doing like assignments and stuff. And so I was finally okay, like this is my chance. This would be a great time to learn Lisp. Only question is, should I use Common Lisp or Scheme?
Yeah.
So I started doing some Googling, and then I don't remember where I first found out about it, but learned about like, oh, there's this Clojure thing that sounds kind of interesting. This was probably around like 2015, by the way, 2016. And anyway, so I did some more Googling. I was like, okay, should I do Clojure? Like, I don't know. And someone posted a tweet, and they said they asked Paul Graham over an email, which Lisp should I use? And he responded and said, start with Clojure. I was like, all right, PG has spoken. That's Clojure.
the startup guard of the US.
Yeah. So I started doing like part-time Clojure stuff for my own projects during college, and graduated, worked for a year at a Scala shop. So did that for a bit, and then after a year decided to quit and live the dream as a full-time startup founder. And so then since then I started doing full-time Clojure.
Nice. And so,
how did you find the difference between Scala and Clojure, though? Because I did Scala as well, and so did Vijay, I think.
Yep.
I mean, this is like 5 years ago, so I've already purged it from my memory.
Okay. Likewise.
It was garbage collected already.
Let's see. I do remember. I vaguely remember the type system being somewhat restrictive.
Yeah.
Or annoying.
I don't
know. That's just what the company I was working at used. It's whatever.
Yeah, I think it depends on the type. Well, not the type, but the type of the Scala code that you're exposed to, right? Because you could write Java directly in Scala, and
Yeah.
you could write Haskell way of more functional thing. You could mix both of them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and now you can write something that looks like Python. So
Yeah.
the full circle. So with
Yeah.
Scala 3. So
Scala
Yeah.
3.
anyway,
Yeah.
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 It's
remember,
really
like,
amazing. It's one of those literally following the Gartner hype cycle curve.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it went shot up, like Scala is everywhere, and then now there is
Oh really?
less noise around it. I think the community has been a bit popcorn
Yeah.
worthy of
Popcorn.
fun. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what is the right word. Dramatic, I think. Yeah.
Drama
Anyway.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, I did like Scala though. Like it was pretty nice. I liked it more than TypeScript. I don't know, just
Yeah.
like for some reason with JavaScript, every time I'd write a piece of code, I have to just do way too many like array dot from something something, so I could just put it in a map and filter. Whereas Scala is a bit more functional
Yeah.
out of the box, which is nice.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
like not bad, but
Yeah.
not enough
And-
parentheses though, obviously.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I think the thing I found, like from Scala to Clojure, which is the biggest thing I think, and it's still a favorite thing of mine with Clojure, is just reaching into a map to get to another map, to get to another map, to get to a property, to get to a data item is like one line is so trivial. But you have to do that in a class system. It's just basic hell,
And then you got options. And all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just like, I just want to get the data. It's like, why do I have to fight? So yeah, that's the thing that really got me.
I think then you end up with, maybe I'm completely wrong here. Maybe I think then you end up with something called lenses in Haskell. Like there is a bit of weird shit in there. But anyway, let's not make it a type system podcast because
it's gonna lose.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't want to get that much engagement.
Exactly. Yes. We don't want to appeal to that bigger audience. No, there is no way. The 5 people who are listening is enough for us.
Exactly.
But how did you? Because as Ray was mentioning, like we have this Luminous, and we have these different templates, and we have different ways of building things, and also pretty much every Clojure project seems to have one or the other flavor of React thing. So how did you end up choosing? Because correct me if I'm wrong, because for me it felt like this is one of the very opinionated, like you pick your components and this is how you're going to build it. And so how did you reach to that opinion, like this is how I want to build the thing with? And
sure. So it's a little bit path dependent. So I guess absolutely, like one important factor is kind of what I was mentioning earlier, is that it started out sort of me experimenting with like these very different ways of doing things. So like with the original version of BIF, like there was nothing else like I was doing something that was very new, which is like I was rebuilding something like the Firebase database functionality on top of XTDB, and that was really the impetus, is that I sort of had this epiphany and I realized, it actually wouldn't be that hard to like do just a custom homegrown thing where you can have clients say like, okay, I want to subscribe to this database from from XTDB and have it work similarly to Firebase. So that was like the original impetus, was building that and trying to explore like that sort of way to build stuff. But then, as I mentioned too, like then over time, like after, I don't know, maybe 8 months or so of doing that, I realized, that being said, like the stuff I'm building is like CRUD apps. Like they're not even like multiplayer apps or anything. Like the stuff I build, most of the interesting things happen on the back end. They're mostly like recommender systems, so there's a little bit of like very basic machine learning stuff going on. But the front end is not complex. And so all this fancy stuff of like, subscribable queries and blah, 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 at the end of the day, I realized like, I don't actually need this. So I switched to just doing just multi-page apps, like server-rendered apps, stopped using
Mm,
React, stopped using ClojureScript.
mm.
And then Biff kind of bifurcated because at that point I changed Biff so like it would ask you when you made a new project like, okay, do you want like a React app with like
Yeah, yeah.
ClojureScript, or just want a multi-page? Because like I myself was using this multi-page thing, but I didn't necessarily feel like that was the best approach for every project. So I wanted people to have like the ClojureScript stuff and all the fancy stuff I built, but I wasn't actually using that myself, so it
Yeah,
wasn't really
yeah.
getting any better. So I was kind of in this weird in between moment.
Mm.
Um, and and then let's see, I'm just kind of remembering the timeline.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, and so then eventually, like actually HTMX. So I started
Yeah.
hearing about HTMX a bit, and
Mm,
that was pretty interesting. And and that kind of hit me like that felt like a way to go back to having like just one default stack that we give people,
yep.
right?
Yep.
And but have it still cover enough cases that it wouldn't be like, half the people
Mm.
who use Biff like get into it and then immediately like, okay, now I have to add in a ClojureScript or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so to answer your question, like I had as far as like all these other things in the ecosystem, like line templates
Mm,
and Luminous and Fulcro and
mm.
things, I'd
Yeah.
I'd used them a little bit. I honestly like I probably should have started with Luminous. I don't know. Like maybe if I had started with Luminous, like Biff wouldn't exist. I don't know. Like at
Yeah,
this point, like
yeah.
looking at Biff and looking at Luminous and Kit and Fulcrum and all these other things,
Mhm.
like there's absolutely like differentiators in there. So
Oh,
it's
yeah, yeah,
it's
certainly. Yeah, yeah.
totally like they're doing different things,
Yeah,
and so it's good. I'm glad it exists. But
yeah.
yeah, as
I mean,
my
for
did not use a principled approach to get to that point. Is what I'm saying. That was
hey,
more
you
just
can
luck.
always now you can rebuild the history.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yes,
It,
3
it's
years ago I planned it all out.
I,
And
exactly. That's how software works, right? You just plan it, and then the requirements are there, and after 7 years, you have amazing software. That's how
Yes,
Yeah,
software
exactly.
development
That I don't
always
know. I mean,
works.
that's how all the stuff I build works. But
of course. Listen,
yeah,
Jacob, I mean, I'm ashamed to say that I don't know what HTMX is.
oh really?
I've heard of it. I mean, it's kind of like I watch conference talks, but
Yeah.
HTMX feels like that side of like front end porn or whatever that I just never delved into. It's a category I've
Oh,
never looked at.
oh yeah.
Um, Maybe I should stop that analogy. Actually,
No, that's a good point. And I have to say, every time I try to research like something in the JavaScript ecosystem, it just feels like this fractal. And
yeah,
like
Yeah,
you hear about
yeah,
one library, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like how does that work? And
yeah,
then when you're reading the README for that, you find out about like 7 other things.
yeah,
And you're
exactly.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay, and
yeah.
then you're just like, oh my goodness, like and so
Mm.
like Clojure on the other hand is so nice because you can actually know like, oh yeah, I feel like I have an idea of sort of everything that's in the community, and then
Yeah, yeah.
something new comes out every once in a while. It's
Mm.
like, oh yeah, it's at a pace that I can actually integrate into my brain and not just feel completely overloaded.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, I totally forgot your question. What was it? HTMX? Oh
Can you
yeah,
Yeah,
humor me?
what
Can
is
you
what is
humor me with an
HTMX?
explanation of HTMX? Because maybe
HTMX.
I'm not the
Yes.
only sort of old back end dude who doesn't know this shit. So
Sure. No, well, HTMX is made for people like you, actually, I think.
okay,
Um,
I feel pandered now.
no, it's great. It's
not
basically
just humoring, but pandering, next level.
Can you pander to me by explaining?
I would-
It's made exactly for people like you. I mean, you're quite a salesman, I've got to say.
I mean, it's actually
It's
says
just
on the
for you,
website
yeah.
like
Ray.
HTMX and then Ray. This is for Ray on the website. So
Okay, well, I'm open to this
You're
sale.
sold.
Please tell me. So do tell me
Yeah.
more.
Yes, absolutely. So the way I think of HTMX is it's basically like, so again, say you got these two polar opposite approaches. On one end, you got the traditional server rendered multi-page stuff, not really using much JavaScript, right? On the other polar extreme, you've got these SPAs and React and maybe ClojureScript and all this complex logic on the front end, right? And so HTMX is basically like like how can like if we just stick with that sort of a server-side rendered model of programming and just try to extend that a little bit, like how far can we get? And so in a nutshell, like basically the idea of HTMX is that instead of so with normal server-side rendered stuff, you can do like a form post, right? If you want to change some data, or you can click on a link and then it takes you to a new page. And either way, like the entire page is going to be reloaded. And so the whole point of HTMX is just, what if you could just have a form where you post the form and then just a section of that page is updated? So for example, say if you're doing something like Twitter or any social media app, you got a post and you have a little like button and you want to click on the like button and have it change to a colored thumbs up or whatever. So, you've liked the post and it's a toggle button, right? So with the traditional approach, you click on the button, does a form post, the entire page reloads. So like if there was state, like if you were scrolled somewhere, that might be lost. If you were typing a comment into somewhere, like that might be gone. Whereas with HTMX, it's more like you got the like button, you click the like button, and then just that little section of the HTML gets replaced.
So it's like Ajax, like not a page level Ajax, but a kind of component level Ajax.
Yeah. And in fact, like HTMX, it's basically a declarative DSL for Ajax.
Oh, okay.
But it's
nice.
I think it's really taking us back. That's what I'm saying. The tagline is basically foray HTMX.
I like it. Yeah.
But it's interesting because this is something that I mean I'm trying to build some front end stuff, and I got like getting annoyed with all this complexity of the whole front end. Basically, you need to build two applications now to build one application. That's what I noticed. And then and now you have this fucking distributed system problem and all that crap. And now I have like a million problems now. And I wanted to go back because I started with Perl templates long time ago, and the CGI and all that crap, and as Ray knows as well. And so then the small dynamic DHTML stuff showed up. Like you could use that small JavaScript request and XML HTTP request where the whole Ajax thing started. It used to be just XML going around, thanks to Microsoft, and that was like you were able to manipulate like smaller parts by just replacing the inner HTML basically for any of the divs or any of the tags, and then this cottage industry that became like a fucking multinational thing of JavaScript frameworks and all that thing showed up. And I had the same issue as you were saying. Like, I mean, I do like that in the ClojureScript world with Reframe and Reagent and all the ecosystem, it's trying to give us a better design, better patterns, and better libraries for the JavaScript ecosystem. But every time you want to veer a little bit off of that one, it's fucking pain in the ass to build these kind of systems. And as you say, most of the things are like, I just need some level of interactivity in the page. It doesn't need to be the whole thing needs to look like a desktop application. Like, no, I don't need that. It doesn't make any sense. So HTMX has been like a really nice replacement. I think for me, it felt like I don't need to write JavaScript because someone else did already and then made it work. So
exactly.
that was the best.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of the sweet spot of HTMX, because I absolutely like HTMX is not a replacement for SPAs, right? Like there's plenty of apps where like that is what you want, right? But I think like the sweet spot of HTMX is like where you're building something that really isn't necessarily that complex, and if you just could add like a little bit of interactivity, you'd be totally fine. And so HTMX it increases the threshold for where it makes sense to switch to an SPA. Is the way I see it.
But in your in the case of BIF, for example, is it HTMX is just used as is? Like you can also use Hyperscript. That what is it called? Hyperscript or
Hyperscript.
Hyperscript. Yeah, can you use that one as well, or is it something like you want to have only HTMX kind of interactions?
No, you can use HyperScript, and in fact, that's sort of recommended. I mean, it's not like extremely recommended, but I use it myself and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
yeah,
They're complementary.
yeah.
But yeah, HTMX it's used as is, and it's not like
Mm.
it's not baked into BIF very deeply.
Yep.
I guess just to give a little bit of background. So BIF has
Mhm.
sort of two parts. There's a bunch of library code, and
Mhm.
then there is a bunch of template code. And so the difference
Mhm.
being like when you make a new BIF project, one, you like it copies a bunch of source files into your new project, right? And so
Mhm.
which is similar to like what Luminous does.
Yeah, yeah.
But then it also adds a dependency to the BIF library code, and which has some additional stuff. So anyway,
Mm.
so with HTMX, um, like HTMX, like there's nothing in the BIF library code that does anything with HTMX. It's just like all BIF does is it just
Mm.
adds the HTMX dependency to your HTML template,
Ah, okay.
and then
Yeah.
there's like there's like an example starter app that has a few CRUD forms, and it shows you how
Mm.
you can update a form with HTMX. But like if
Mm.
you didn't want to use it, then like you just take it out and it's no big deal.
Yeah.
So just so I
Mm.
understand then, because it's like I said, it's new to me. So if you're used to using like Hiccup and stuff like that, how does
Yeah.
HTMX compare?
Oh, it's very complementary with Hiccup, and actually, I think Clojure is, for that reason, probably one of the better languages to use with HTMX. Anyway, so though to answer your question, um, so Hiccup handles the rendering, and this is actually kind of a misconception that I think some people have when they're first looking at HTMX is they're thinking HTMX does the rendering like
Mm.
something like React might, but it
Mm.
doesn't. Like all HTMX does is the Ajax.
Mm.
So like all of the rendering happens on the back end. And so
Right. Okay.
you'll use Hiccup and you'll have, and so the way it works with HTMX is like, I mean, you'll have like your regular endpoints that are rendering an entire full page, right?
Mm. Mm.
But then you'll also have like a handful of smaller endpoints that are just rendering like snippets of HTML,
Mm.
with Hiccup, and so that works really well with Clojure because you know if you want to make a reusable bit of HTML, like it's just a plain function, right?
Mm.
With
Mm.
Hiccup, which is super
Yeah.
nice. Like you don't have to make like a separate template or anything. So you'll have like these little endpoints, and then HTMX will just be like calling these different endpoints that are returning Hiccup.
Okay.
Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mm.
then what? So the HTMX is just like a little thing you plop in to say this bit is this bit of Hiccup should be essentially have a little gap filled in by the HTMX code.
So yeah, so like you use HTMX by putting these like special attributes
Yeah.
on your
HX dash something.
yeah
Yeah.
HX dash like
Yeah.
post or whatever.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
going back to the like button example, so if you have this like button and say it's a regular form,
So you make a form
so
in Hiccup, yeah.
yeah, so you make a form in Hiccup, and so normally you'd have like, you know, action is, you know, the endpoint of the post endpoint thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and method is post, right? With HTMX, you will instead use like a special hx dash post attribute, and then you say like the URL of the endpoint that you want to hit. And
Mm.
so then what that does is when you submit the form, it will hit that endpoint and do the post request, um, and then it'll get the response of that endpoint. But then instead of using that response for the entire page, it'll just replace the like button with that little
Right,
snippet.
okay, okay. That's pretty magical. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was very impressed. I mean, I wasn't using with Clojure yet because there's something that I want to try with BIF, but I have I'm still not using XTDB anywhere, so that is
Yeah.
stopping me from using BIF right now because I'm using Rust with HTMX, which is super nice to deal with,
Oh, nice.
and with the mini Jinja templating and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting experience compared to Clojure when I need to compile the shit and then see the output all the time. I guess it's fast enough, but it's okay. But
Yeah.
that brings me to the next question. Like So component wise, so there is HTMX, which is used as the thing, and I know you use the Tailwind as the default the
Tailwind.
CSS thingy. What else does, in terms of the web frameworky thing, what else does BIF provide? Like, is there a router? Is there a security thingy, or is it all those components? And how do you build that one, or how do you use BIF for?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so there's a bunch of random crap in there. So yeah, there's a router.
So you mean there is a multi CD and distributed region stuff is there already baked in,
clientless, serverless.
Is already baked
you mean there's
in.
a carefully principled selected curation of components from which
exactly. And I'm happy to provide enterprise support contracts for all.
Nice.
Good to know.
Yeah. Okay. So seriously, so there's a router. It's using, and I don't know how I write it. I believe.
Right?
The one.
Rated.
Yes. Sorry, rated from Matosin. So it's using that.
Yeah.
Great library. Let's see and authentication. So the authentication bit, it's using passwordless, like email sign-in links and sign-in codes. So like you have two options. You can have it like send you a link in the email, or have it send you like a 6-digit code, which both have some pros and cons. Both of those are the result of me spending like 20 hours poring over OWASP documentation and feeling like, okay, like what are the actual risks here? Anyway, so that's authentication, routing. We talked about the rendering stuff.
What do you do for the authentication? Do you like have some links to a store somewhere, or do you run a store, or do you link to Auth0, or how does that work?
No, so it's not using any like third party dependencies or like SaaS dependencies or anything.
So even the normal flow is like just like a magic link that Slack does then.
Yeah.
Even when you log in. Okay.
Yes, it's the same as that.
Interesting.
And the way it does it is just with JWTs. So like when you create the project, it'll generate a signing key and put it in your config file, and so then BIF will use that to sign the JWTs.
Okay. So the user store is local then, as well.
Yeah, I mean it's stateless. There is no user store because it's just you're just signing JWTs.
Well, what are you authenticating?
Well, the way you're authenticating is you're assigning a token. So like so you put in your email address, say like ray@gmail.com. And so BIF will then create a token and sign it.
No, we just doxed Ray.
I did get that one, yeah.
Sorry, I meant Ray at example.com.
Now he's gonna get all this. This is also for you. Spam.
Scholar 3, come back.
The new Strimmer 9000 for you. Sorry, I'm digressing.
Anyway, yeah.
No. Okay, yeah. So token. The token contains the email address ray@example.com.
Right. Okay.
And it is signed so that the secret signing key that BIF has on the back end is used to sign that key or that token. Okay, so then we take the token and we email it to you.
Right.
And say, check your email. So if you then click on the link, and then that link includes the token. And so BIF knows, okay, you have this token that we signed. The only way you could have this token is if you have access to this email address.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But is it possible to plug in like a two-factor thing into this one? If
I mean, it's possible in the sense that Clojure is Turing complete.
Yeah,
do it.
PR's welcome.
So no, I have not built in anything as far as multi-factor authentication. And if you did need that, I would if someone came to me today and said, "Oh, I need multi-factor authentication," I would say just use Auth0 probably. And
yeah, fair enough.
Or maybe Firebase Auth. I don't know if they do multi-factor.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking like, oh, should I build out more authentication things? But I feel like for BIF, like the authentication stuff it has now, like it's simple enough, like it's good enough for sort of, the solo developer use case that I'm primarily targeting.
Mm.
And
Mm.
if you really need something more complex, then I think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
makes sense just use.
Yeah, I
No,
think
something
Auth0
else.
is a fair way to use that one, because these days I think authentication is painful enough that with the SSOs and all that stuff, and
Yeah,
it's better to just plug in Okta or Auth0 or one of these things than
yeah,
move on. And
yeah.
external, it's just a bit of a weird thing that you're kind of giving away the most critical component of your system to and then it brings back the weird memories of the IDPs that all the systems used to build. Like Oracle used to have their own IDP and all that nonsense. So anyway, it's a different
I
problem.
mean,
Yeah.
surely what you should do is just have a Facebook sign-in button. That's the best way.
Yeah,
I am
that's
joking,
true.
everybody. Okay.
Well, have Ray's email address, so please complain. Ray@example.com.
I did get that one. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you've got HMX, you've got authentication for some value of that. Which I think, like you say, it's definitely a nice start.
Yeah.
Gets
So authentication, we got
there
routing.
for a lot of people.
Also the database XTDB, which is another one of the main components.
Yeah. So why XTDB? Why not MongoDB? Well, that's
MongoDB.
Why not MongoDB?
I think a better question is why MongoDB?
Yeah.
Why don't you want to shoot yourself in the cock?
I mean, it's funny that
it's fine.
Yeah. I think that the jokes are now going to live forever on MongoDB, although they changed it entire design and everything. But no, why not ClickHouse? Why not something else? Is there any reason? And how pluggable is this thing?
Pluggable? Oh, like could you use a different database?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now that what you might call it, now that Datomic is free now.
Datomic.
Yeah.
It's free. Yeah. So
what do you call it? This is a closure podcast.
Like what was it? Day something?
Some database thingy.
Dayquil, Tonic.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So coming to that question, yeah, it's pluggable. Like you can replace it, because again, it's like BIF provides some convenience layers on top of XTDB, but like as far as other than that, the integration is just mainly in the template app again. So it's like when you make a new project and it's got some example code, like here's how you query something from the database, here's how you save something to the database. So like if you wanted to use Postgres or ClickHouse or whatever, you can, or MongoDB, you can just go through the template app and just take all the calls to XTDB and just replace them.
Okay.
The thing I like about XTDB, which is a bit MongoDB like, is that you can just take some Eden and just store it.
Yeah.
Whereas with MongoDB, you can do the same, but with Datomic, oh no, you've got to set your schema up front.
Yeah, you got the schema. Yeah, and so I'll get into the first question now, which is why do I like XTDB? So FYI, just so we're clear, XTDB is the world's best database.
Okay.
And that has nothing to do with the fact that Juxt is a corporate
sponsoring.
It has nothing, totally unrelated. Just on the merits, XTDB is the best database in the world.
I'm also working with Juxt at the moment, and I think they're a great company, and their database is awesome. So yeah, let's Juxt.
I think we should have like subliminal messaging, right? Every 10 seconds, someone says Juxt like irrelevant, like there is or XTDB or something. Just keep saying that one,
I've heard of that closure function, Juxt. It's just great.
You can have sponsorship deals where it's like, how many mentions of your brand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But is that the reason like it is named like 4-character word? Because when we had like folks from Jackson, they're like, we wanted to pick something that is a 4-character thing. Pretty much all the projects that we do are 4-character stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Well, also they're just recycling the last half of Juxt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
XTDB.
So yeah. I mean, it's very sustainable.
Yeah, and like they're already used.
They've really got only 2 letters. They've only got 2 letters now.
Exactly.
It's like, the CTO Malcolm, he's made this website called Site. We should change it to XT whatever.
Yeah, XT something. Yeah, yeah.
XT website, XTWS. Yeah. Come on, Malcolm. That's for free, okay?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. Okay. So, original question: why is XTDB?
Other than the bags of money, why XTDB?
other than the bags of money. Okay.
What first attracted you to millionaire company?
Yeah. So okay. So anyway, I started with Datomic, which is great.
Yeah.
I used Datomic for like year and a half, I think. Did it with like the pure client, whatever that's called, for a while, and then did Cloud Ions, as I mentioned earlier. I eventually kind of came to the conclusion, like it felt like Datomic was more targeted towards, I don't know if I'd say like enterprise use case, but certainly people who are larger than me,
Sure.
like
people with more money.
Yeah, people who have money, and more than one developer, perhaps, and stuff. So just an example,
like big Brazilian banks or something like that.
I don't know,
exactly.
Something like that, right? So just an example. So with the pure client, if you want to set it up. And hopefully it's the same way. I don't want to be spouting misinformation about Datomic because I haven't actually been on that scene in a while. But at least at the time, like you got the transactor and you have the pure process, right? So like if you want to say go like load up a DigitalOcean thing and start deploying an app with the Datomic pure thing, like that's two separate JVM processes you need, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a question of like storage backend, which I don't remember.
Yeah. You need to switch between. I mean, you need to pick a Postgres or DynamoDB or
something like that. So like that's like, I mean, you could So again, so for the solo developer use case, like my use case, I could possibly just put them on the same machine, but I mean, you got two JVMs on one machine, which could be hairy with memory usage and things, or you gotta like just have two different droplet like VMs that you're.
They migrated to. They have a REST API client now, so you don't need to have that pure client anymore. But that was early days.
So there might be better ways to do it. Anyway, and then also there's the fact that it's like there is the license fee, which is not a factor anymore. But at the time, it's like do I even like would I want to use a database? And then after a year I can't use any updates and stuff, and so it didn't feel like it was really the best fit for my use case, if you know what I mean. Whereas XTDB, one of the really nice things about XTDB is that it all just fits in a single JVM process, right? So like if you want to I mean, you need to choose the storage backend, right? But like, so say in development, you can use the like file system for the storage backend, and then you just got you got your app process, and you got the XTDB thing that's just part of that process. You just start it up in the same thing. So a single JVM, and like if you want to deploy it, you can. I mean, one option is you can just keep using the file system backend and just do like disk backups or whatever, or you can use Postgres as a storage backend, which is great because again, like you got the one droplet with all of your Clojure process stuff in it, and then just use
one database,
and just Postgres, and because like everyone has a Postgres, like a managed Postgres thing you can plug into. So just from like the deployment ops side, I found like XTDB felt pretty nice to me. Like it fit pretty well with the whole solo developer thing. So that was big. Comparing it to like Postgres, like I'm a big fan of the data log queries. Like especially like the implicit joins are super nice. Like whereas SQL, like you get into like anytime you want to do something somewhat interesting, like all of a sudden you've got like select from this inner join on this, and the queries just tend to get out of hand a little bit. Whereas with the data log stuff, it stays flatter, I find. So I like that. And then I'd say the third thing that I also liked a lot is what you mentioned, Ray, is the schemalessness. So whereas like Postgres and Datomic, they've got the schema baked into the database. XT lets you just kind of do that on your own. which by
Mm,
the way is like what part of what BIF adds to it. So like BIF
mm,
lets you define schema with Mali or
yep.
Okay.
Mali. I think that's how you say it. Sorry. But with whatever that library is called, you
Yeah.
define your schema, and then BIF will like when you're submitting documents to it, it'll check it against that schema. So I've appreciated that flexibility, um,
Mm,
Yeah.
and then it's also nice because like if you like you don't have to do migrations every time you want to like add a new attribute or something. It's just
yeah.
update
Mm.
your Mali schema and stuff. So
Mm,
it's
nice.
been overall like it's been ergonomic. It's easy to deploy. It's
Mm.
free, which Datomic is also free, of course, now. Um, so
But
I've been really happy with it.
yeah, this might be like a you know maybe unanswerable question, or maybe too fluffy. But is there any performance related things that BIF does better compared to piecing all these things together, or is it entirely dependent on the underlying components? Because web framework performance is always like a weird thing to say. Like people say, oh, we can serve like 200,000 hello world requests in a nanosecond, like as if we care. Like no one gives a shit, you know. So with that caveat in picture, like, is there something that you want to talk about performance about, in the context of BIF?
Yeah. So as far as performance, like I'd say certainly the largest factor is just the underlying components. And
Mm,
again, like BIF, like most of BIF is just tying together other components that are already mature. So like
mm,
XTDB or Jetty for the web server
mm,
or Radit for the router. So like those things are taken care of.
yeah.
Like BIF does add its own like middleware stack,
Mm,
which may or may not be performant,
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but overall, like especially for the solo developer use case, like it's totally fine. Like I would
yeah, yeah,
say
yeah,
to anyone in
yeah.
that use case, like the performance of BIF is totally fine,
Mm.
and
But for the
certainly for
for the
latency.
scalability part of it, I don't think there is any limitation, right? Given that it's primarily stateless, so it's much easier to just start multiple instances or something, and then just slap reverse proxy in front of it.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah, and I'd say like the main thing there would be just the characteristics of XTDB, right? So
Yeah. Yep.
it's a single writer, but then
Mm,
you've got the immutable read. So like reading is very easy to scale because it's just horizontally scalable.
mm,
Um,
mm. Okay. Yeah, I think for the case, I mean, you probably, if you go to that level, so if you start as a solo developer and then start using BIF, and then you're wildly successful with your
yeah.
enterprise tooling, selling to all these people. But is there like a transition path that you think you would recommend as the author of BIF, or is
Uh,
there something?
like
Well,
like is
pay,
there a
pay me
point?
some consulting fee. I'll scale it up for you.
Yeah. So um, I mean I I've designed BIF so that you can take it apart. Um,
Mm, yeah.
that is one of the explicit design goals is
Mm,
that it's not meant to be just super glued together and you don't change anything. Like it's the design is so that like any part of BIF you can swap it out.
mm,
So like I mentioned, like all of the components BIF is built on are quite mature. So like there aren't any parts of BIF that I feel like, oh, this is something you're definitely going to watch out for or need to watch out
yeah.
for. I
Yeah.
well, I guess one thing I might say is like if you're scaling up, like you'll get to a point where, I mean, of course, the first thing might be adding multiple web servers, right? So
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
node, you're going to want to have multiple and like throw a load balancer in front of
Exactly.
them.
Yeah.
Um, and after that, probably the next thing where you would transition is adding some sort of job queue.
Hmm.
Um, so instead of just like doing everything on the same machine, right? Like you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
be able to, have a separate worker node and have your web service put stuff onto it. And that
Mm,
is something like if I was doing that today, I would probably just add in Redis maybe and
yeah.
use
Yeah.
whatever library people are using for Redis because
Mm,
XTDB is like you could build some job queue stuff on top of it, but it's not really ideal for that.
yeah.
I mean,
But I think
Yeah, yeah.
XGB, to use our sponsors' time here, I think it is
Well,
quite
they're not
scalable.
sponsors, but yeah.
Yeah. It's I was going to say the what you might call it, it is quite a scalable solution because you can
yeah.
have Kafka in front of it and all this kind of stuff,
Oh yeah,
so
yeah, totally.
I think there are architectures where it does grow,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that the database side, I think, because the scalability is multi-pronged issue,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you want to scale the web side of it, and
yeah,
luckily you don't need to worry about, there is no separate front end that you need to scale in because you're using HTMX plus BIF, and
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
if once you start scaling the web nodes, you're essentially scaling the entire web app by itself.
I think
And
though,
the job
to be
queue
honest
and
though,
yeah,
VJ, I mean, I think
yeah,
what BIF is aimed for is like, relatively small scale web apps. And if you're going to
mm,
design like a massively super scaled application,
yeah,
you've probably got other problems,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
already,
totally. I mean,
you're already
because
into like a team and you've got architecture.
exactly, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
Yeah.
maybe you're going for
yeah,
event driven models and shit like this,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean,
So
given that, I think the success rate of startups, and when you start with
Yeah,
small beef
yeah.
app, and then you want to scale up, and you're one of those unicorns now and then.
yeah. So the way I think about it is that like, so one BIF is meant to be ideal for hobbyists, right?
Mm.
But it is also meant to be good for quote unquote serious apps like
Yeah,
startups, which is my
yeah,
use case. Like I've been a full
yeah,
time startup founder
Yeah.
for the past 4.5 years, so
mm,
so like that is in fact, I mean that's the first case because like the primary target user of BIF is myself, and so all design
mm,
decisions are
Yeah.
what do I want, and then as a secondary thing, what would maybe hobbyists want or something.
yeah,
So anyway, so like the idea I have with BIF is I want it to be good enough for that use case. Like say you're a solo founder and you're working on it full time. Like I want BIF to be enough that you can just focus on iterating towards product market fit. And once you
yeah,
hit
yeah,
product market fit, then
yeah,
do whatever you need to do. Maybe like
exactly.
rip it out, use full crow,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever you need to do,
yeah,
right? But
yeah.
until you get to that point, BIF should ideally be enough that you don't need to worry about too much of
Yeah.
the like.
So it
underlying
gives
stuff.
the initial velocity you need to deliver something that you can test the idea and then make sure that your
Yeah.
product is actually
So
doing
it's a
something.
minimum viable product type
Yeah,
stack.
yeah, that's how I would say it. And again, like my intent is that BIF can also still, grow with your app. It's not like you hit product market fit and now BIF just falls
Yeah, yeah,
apart. Like that's,
yeah.
I mean, hopefully BIF
Let's
is not
switch.
like that,
Let's
right?
switch to Ruby on Rails now.
Yeah. The idea is like once you get to there though, like BIF's not doing anything for you necessarily. It's just hopefully not getting in your way. So like it helps you get to there and then it gets out of the way.
But like probably on like a single node with XTDB in the back, you can probably support like hundreds of concurrent users.
Oh yeah.
So you'd have to be quite successful to get more than a few hundred concurrent users.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's true.
It's like it's like this joke about web scale and shit. It's like
exactly.
And that's absolutely what I would like. Just scale vertically first, and then you should.
I think that's
Definitely.
It's way cheaper and faster to scale vertically than horizontally. Anyway,
absolutely,
I mean, you have bigger problems once you start adding more nodes. Super cool.
I also like the fact that I'm looking at the web page here, and you've got like ways to deploy. Because this is the thing that I like the fact that you're pushing out to a Ubuntu VPS. It's not it's just some Terraform to deploy to Amazon. Fuck those guys.
You're
deploying to a nice Linode or something.
BIF started with Terraform. Actually, I used to have some Terraform. It's one of the parts that I took out and realized, oh yeah, actually Bash script is good enough.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, presumably you're porting it to a Bashka right now, but
no, not actually. I use Babashka in different parts of BIF though.
Oh, okay,
so It does use Babashka, just not for this or provisioning.
But the whole development experience or the project creation and everything is using Babashka, right? And
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
so
know, so
like,
you're keeping everyone happy, you know. It's like-
Yeah.
yeah,
All you need to do is just add the CDN stuff and multi-region thing, and it's
yeah.
web scale, and you're ready.
Clientless, serverless.
yeah.
Exactly. So just to wrap up the discussion, and what is the next thing that you have? Do you have any kind of a roadmap, or is it like that Buster Keaton thing, like you're just putting rails as the train goes?
Yeah. So I do have a bit of a roadmap. Um,
Hmm.
as far as the code, it's actually in a pretty mature state. Like
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that BIF will never change. But I don't have like any huge code changes on my mind,
Yeah.
which I consider to be a great thing. Actually, it's
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
been fairly stable for a while. I
Yeah.
guess one thing on the horizon would be XTDB2.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping to. I haven't actually had a chance to play with that yet, but I'm planning to start experimenting with XTDB2 a
Hmm.
little bit, and so then that would that'll involves some like additional things with BIF, like the current system, like I mentioned with BIF's schema enforcement. That'll look a little bit different because now XDDB2 has this concept of like specific tables or document collections and things,
Hmm.
which is nice. And
Yeah.
that'll actually be pretty helpful for BIF.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there'll be some stuff to look out for that. Like other than that,
Mm.
I'm 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 interested in staying up to date on like what's out there, like what other frameworks are doing and things, so I can like keep an eye out, like in case there is something that like, oh, this could be interesting to put into both. But yeah.
Mm.
As far as stuff I am planning to do, I basically there are like two things that are on my mind. One is more documentation, and all of the core documentation is complete, which is also, by the way, one of the big advantages of BIF. I think like it's got reference docs, it's all the doc strings are
Yeah.
written, it's got tutorial. Thanks to, I should
Yeah.
mention Clojurist Together, by the way, which
Yeah. Yeah.
has given me a grant a couple times, including for the tutorial that was funded by them.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So donate to Clojurist Together, and
Yeah.
so that's all in place. I would like to write more documentation that helps people learn like about how BIF works under the hood.
Hmm.
So like an idea of kind of how to is to write a series of posts that like uh, there's two ways I could do it. So one way is the posts, they have you build a web app from scratch without using BIF, and they just
Hmm.
say like show you
Yeah.
how to do it with the underlying libraries, but doing it in the
Mm.
same approach and architecture as BIF does it. So like by the time you get to the end of the set of tutorials, it's like, oh, you've actually kind of rewritten BIF yourself.
Yeah.
And then you realize,
Congratulations, you have wasted your time. Now go back and use BIF.
exactly. So then at least then you know how it works under the hood, and you know
Yeah.
if you need to change something, like you know exactly how to do it. So
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
one thing.
Yeah.
Another approach could be, instead of doing bottom up, I just do top down and just say like,
Mm.
okay, so authentication is something BIF
Yeah.
provides, and just write some posts that talk in detail
Yeah.
like how does authentication work, and if you wanted to change something, like how would you do
Mm.
it?
Yeah.
So something like that's on the radar. The
Mm.
other thing is I'm interested in more like real world example apps for BIF.
Mhm.
So like I've had an app released for about a year plus called Platypub, which is
Mhm.
it's a publishing platform, kind of like WordPress.
Yeah.
So it lets you publish a static site, and then you can have a newsletter as part of it. It's very
Yeah.
half baked. It's been half
Mm.
baked ever since I released it.
Yeah.
I use it for my the BIF website, by the way, is published with Platypub.
Oh, okay.
And so anyway, and that's open source, written in BIF. I'd like to fully bake that and
Mm.
turn that into like a project that people can get into and learn from and be like, oh, here's like a real world BIF app I can study and contribute. Like if people want to contribute to an open source
Yeah. Yeah.
project, have issues and stuff like that, and have it be this
Mm.
community driven thing.
Mm. Nice.
One thing I noticed actually, and it's sort of something that I'm like a big proponent of, is you say develop in prod. in
Yes.
the
Oh,
front
that's good.
page. Deploy in seconds by hot swapping new code automatically whenever you save a file. Unlock the
Yes.
power of Lisp. So tell us about that, because I love that idea. So what's your it's like the
Oh, yeah.
PHP story, so like this is
Uh-huh.
where we've got to get back to.
Yes,
You just
exactly.
YOLO it and then move on.
Yeah, so that is one of my favorite parts of Biff. And actually a lot of the way I've structured Biff has been in the service of that goal. Like it's very there's like late binding, lots of late binding stuff just to make sure like as much as possible you don't have to restart the whole app to update your code. But anyway, so like that came about because let's see, it was like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. I was wanting a lighter weight approach to just kind of developing my own like hobby projects and stuff, because like I'm working full time on my startup stuff, right? But
Mm,
I still have this like never ending idea of like, oh, it'd be nice if I just had this tiny little app to save my bookmarks or stuff, whatever.
mm,
So I wanted like I wanted something that would make it easier for me to just like spend maybe an hour a week and just be able to drop into a project and add some code and do stuff and get out of it and be able to be productive and not have like a lot of context switching or overhead time.
mm,
And so I started having this idea of like, okay, what if I was just did all my development on the REPL? Because I had started doing like a lot of my development on the startup with just connecting to the REPL and evaluating it in the editor, and then after the fact, pushing a commit to Git in case like the app is started or something. And so I had
mm,
this idea of like, what if the entire development workflow was like, what if that was a first class citizen in a sense, right?
mm, mm,
Um, and so then I started having this idea of like, okay, I could make it so like say um, whenever you save a file, and this is what Biff does. So like whenever you save a file, when you have the development prod thing running, it will rsync all of your files onto the VPS,
mhm.
um, and then it will evaluate them. And
Oh.
like I mentioned, it's like all of the components in Biff are structured with like late binding in a way so that like for the vast majority of the code, like a normal simple evaluation is enough to update it. Like you don't have to do a like take down the system and then evaluate and then bring it back up or restart the entire process. It's just
So it has a
like
watcher. It has some sort of watcher that's running all the time.
uh kind of, yeah, like mainly in dev it's got the file system watcher. So
Yeah.
like with the development prod thing, the file system watcher is watching for file system changes, and so that'll run rsync. But
Yeah.
then once rsync finishes, the local process on your machine will then issue a command over SSH to the production
Mm,
process, which will then have it evaluate the files on the server.
Right.
nice.
Okay. And does it use any of these like component systems, or is it written so that it will just like be, let's say, amenable to just evaluation on the fly?
Yeah, I mean it's so the component system, it's using kind of a homegrown thing. So not like component or integrant or mount.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very lightweight, like conceptually it's structured kind of like component, where you've got like a system map, and that map gets passed between these different components. Um, I guess one thing though is there kind of at least like I've seen with integrant, there are a couple different approaches that people sometimes use. Like one is like there's one approach where you have like lots and lots of little components, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm, mm,
granular
yeah,
components, you might say.
yeah.
And so then each little component can say, I just need these two config items, and just say exactly what you need, right?
Mm,
And Biff doesn't quite take that approach. Like Biff's components, like it's got a handful, maybe 8 or 9, but they're only used for like kind of the major actual stateful things for the most part, like the web server or the database, um,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. As far as like the more granular stuff, Biff has a concept of plugins,
mhm,
and plugins are not stateful or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So and plugins are what contain your application code. So like in Biff,
mm,
like your application code is in plugins, and your quote unquote framework code is inside of these components. And so like
Okay.
if you were to update some of the framework code, then you would have to restart the system. And you'd have some downtime for that, at least a few seconds, not necessarily a lot. But as far as like all of your application code that's in the plugins, like all of that can be updated just over the REPL without, just a normal evaluation.
That's
That is
interesting. So
nice.
how is the upgrade story then? If I want to move from one version of BIF to the next one, is it just replacing the framework files, and then the interface between this plugin system and framework is stable enough?
Yeah, so whenever I do a release for BIF, so going back, I mentioned, so there again, two parts of BIF. There's the library code, and then the bits that the template bits that actually get copy pasted into your project. So
Yeah.
as far as the library code is concerned, like when that's updated, like all you do is you just bump your BIF version in deps.edn. So that's normal. For the template stuff, like if I change something that's in the template files that normally is copied and pasted into new projects, then in the release announcement, I write up steps and say, okay, like if you want to upgrade, then you need to do this and this and this. And a lot of times it's optional. It's like you don't, like if you want, you don't have to update the template stuff, but if you want, you can do this. So I'm very meticulous about the documentation for the releases.
So you know what bits you need to change and how the upgrade path is smoother. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But that reevaluation thing sounds really interesting, Jacob. Yeah, I'm eager to look into it because I think this idea
I
of
think you just
everything being like constantly being reevaluated is super interesting.
You just need to change the website to BIF for Ray, and then he's sold. And that's it. But
I'm sold on all this stuff so far. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's already a customer, and I think I have one question to decide whether it's still something that I want to try or not. So. So what editor do you use? Is it Emacs or some other shit? So that is going to be the make or break thing for me.
It's Vim, the best one.
Oh fuck. Oh, okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
But okay, so here's
close
the
enough.
thing.
Close enough.
Here's the thing. With BIF's REPL thing, or like the evaluation stuff.
Yeah.
One of the cool things about it is you don't actually even like strictly have to have an nREPL plugin for your editor, because it's doing the file watching. If you just save all the files and everything will be up to date, you don't have to worry about like, oh, I have to evaluate this file in my buffer. So like absolutely, it's still nice to have the nREPL thing, so you can
of course,
evaluate little bits of code and stuff. But you, especially if you are like still getting like learning Clojure and setting up a development thing, you could get started with BIF and be very productive with it and never know how to evaluate something from your editor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's something really like, more and more. I think before when we started recording, we were talking about the beginner experience, and this is something that providing like opinionated quote unquote framework or something that people can get to the place where, look, I want to make a whatever the fucking to-do list or something, instead of fighting through, oh, let me set up the editor, let me do something else, let me figure out the build file, let me figure out what is this thing. And I think that initial dopamine hit is so important to, like hooking people up to Clojure. And I think BIF does really, really good job. And I really love, your focus on documentation and your focus on, making it smooth experience to build something. And also you're very clear on what is the target audience. And most of the people who are coming to build these kind of things are individual developers, right? They're not like, oh, we are like a 200,000 people company. We need to decide a new web framework. Yeah. So I think it's a excellent project, and I've been very impressed so far. With the way that you're releasing it and then maintaining it, and your focus on that one, and my love towards like HTMX stuff as well, and that aligns with it. And Vim, I'll forgive that one.
Thank you. That means a lot.
You were, I think
Vim
you were,
notwithstanding.
weren't you on a podcast about 3 or 4 years ago talking about it when it was a Firebase thing with Biff? Because I seem to remember that.
I was on.
if it wasn't for Firebase, this all sounds really cool, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I think your pivot to leave Firebase has really sold me on it, for sure.
Now, just to be clear, and this might have been unclear before, is Biff was never built on top of Firebase per se, but it was a replacement for Firebase.
Okay. I thought you used it for the authentication or something.
I don't remember. I might have actually forgot about that.
Yeah. But that's in the history, so.
Yeah, I was more than 6 months ago. I've totally forgotten
fine.
about it.
No, but it sounds really great, you know, and like Vijay says, this idea of getting like an application built in 15 minutes, you know, the sort of Ruby on Rails type thing for Clojure. You know, we've been missing it, so it's great to get some full stack thing out there pretty quick. Yeah, and like you say, you've still got the potential to change a lot of things as you go along. So it's quite idiomatic in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's it from us for this episode, and thanks Jacob for taking the time and
absolutely,
explaining everything, and hopefully there'll be more Biffy stuff in the future for you, and
I'm sure
we'll put all the links for the things in the show notes anyway, and for people and the Platypub thing, is it also open source? It's
yeah.
in your okay. Yeah.
Do you want me to? I can put a link
No,
to
it's
that
okay. I
in the
mean,
show.
I'll find it and then and then I'll publish that one as well. Cool. And that's it from us, and hopefully everyone is doing fine. And we'll be back with another episode soon. Thanks a lot.
Jux.
Thank you for listening to this episode of DefN. And the awesome vegetarian music or the track is Melon Hamburger by Pizzeri. And the show's audio is mixed by Wouter Dullert. I'm pretty sure I butchered his name. Maybe you should insert your own name here, Dullert.
Jux.
If you'd like to support us, please do check out our Patreon page, and you can show your appreciation to all the hard work or the lack of hard work that we're doing. And you can also catch up with either Ray, with me, for some unexplainable reason. You want to interact with us, then do check us out on Slack, Clojurian Slack or Clojureverse, or on Zulip, or just at us at DefN Podcast on Twitter. Enjoy your day and see you in the next episode.